The ship door opened with a hiss. Zia stood at the edge, her boots shaking slightly. Her long silver hair flowed behind her as she stared at the world below, Earth, the human planet, full of strange sounds, strange smells, and even stranger machines. She was not ready, but she had no choice. Her people sent her as part of a peace exchange. Live with a human, they said. Learn their ways, they said. Zia didn't want to go, but she was the chosen one, a symbol of trust, a living gift from one world to another. The air felt thick here, too many scents, too much light. But Zia kept walking, her eyes alert, her hands ready to draw her small plasma knife if needed. She reached the front of a strange box-shaped house. This was her new home. Her heart pounded. She raised her hand to knock, but before she could, the door swung open, fast, loud, and toward her. Zia shrieked and jumped back. She pulled her knife, aiming at the door. "What kind of creature is this?" she whispered. It had moved on its own. A human male stood in the doorway, eyes wide in shock. "Whoa! Easy there," he said, raising his hands. Zia didn't lower her weapon, not yet. The male had messy brown hair, a simple shirt, and a confused look on his face. "I'm Jake," he said slowly. "You must be Zia, right?" She nodded slowly, still watching the door. "It attacked me," she said softly. Jake blinked, then looked at the door. "You mean the door?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, still tense. "It tried to bite me." Jake smiled nervously. "That's just how doors work here. They swing open." She tilted her head. "Why would anyone design a barrier that attacks?" "It's not attacking," Jake said. "It's just a door." She didn't look convinced, but she stepped inside slowly. As the door closed behind her with another creak, she flinched again. Jake sighed. "This is gonna be fun." Inside the house, Zia scanned everything. She noticed blinking lights on a black screen. She saw a strange box making a humming sound. She stepped on a soft surface and jumped. "What is this ground?" she asked. Jake chuckled. "That's a carpet. It feels like fur," she said, suspicious. Jake grinned. "You'll get used to it." He gave her a quick tour. "This is the living room," he said, pointing to a soft couch. Zia poked the couch, and her fingers sank into it. She yanked her hand back like it bit her. "This is dangerous," she muttered. Jake laughed. "No, that's just a sofa. Soft furniture." He took her to the kitchen. Here, machines lined the walls. Big, cold, humming, glowing, beeping. Zia stayed near the wall, watching every movement of the machines. "This one is a fridge," Jake said, opening the door. Zia's eyes widened. "It lights up and holds food in the cold." Jake nodded. "Exactly." She was amazed and terrified. Everything in the house seemed alive. The fans spun on their own. The lights obeyed finger taps. The water came out of metal snakes. And the doors, they still scared her most. As Jake walked ahead, Zia reached for a side door. She gently touched the handle and pulled. It didn't move. She pushed. Still nothing. Then she pulled again, harder. The door yanked back toward her again. She screamed and stumbled back, hitting the wall. Jake ran over. "What now?" "It bit me again," she said, pointing. "That's the closet door," Jake said, trying not to laugh. "This house is cursed," Zia whispered. Later, Jake showed her to her room, a small space with a bed, table, and a glowing panel near the wall. She touched the panel, and the lights changed. She stared in awe. "It responds to touch." Jake nodded. "Basic tech." Zia frowned. "Basic to you, deadly to me." That night, as she lay in bed, she couldn't sleep. Her eyes stayed on the ceiling, watching the spinning fan. What if it dropped and attacked? What if the door opened again by itself? She pulled the blanket up to her chin and whispered to herself, "Stay alert, Zia, stay alive." But just before sleep took her, she heard a faint sound, a flush, a deep watery growl. Her eyes flew open. What was that? She whispered in the dark. She didn't know it yet, but the real nightmare was in the bathroom. The growling sound came again, deep and watery, like a hungry beast breathing in the dark. Zia sat up in her bed, eyes wide, every muscle frozen. It was coming from behind the wall, where the human had taken her earlier, the bathroom. She moved slowly, silently, her bare feet touching the soft floor that still felt strange under her. She remembered Jake saying, "That's the toilet, nothing to be afraid of." But that sound, it was alive. It growled when touched. It roared when flushed. No one could tell her that was normal. She stood in front of the bathroom door, hands shaking. Her people had trained her for war, for science, for survival, but not for whatever this was. She reached for the handle, pulled it open carefully. The lights turned on by themselves again. Another trick, she thought. The toilet sat there, silent now, pretending. It was a strange shape, too smooth, too white, too still, like a predator waiting for movement. Zaya narrowed her eyes, stepped closer, her fingers brushing the side of the bowl. It felt cold, like metal pretending to be porcelain. She stared at the silver handle on the side. That's what Jake had pressed when it made the roar. She had to understand it. If she was to live among humans, she must face their machines, even this one. She took a deep breath, placed her hand on the handle, and pushed it down. The sound exploded, water swirling, spinning in a circle, as if a portal to another world had opened. Zaya jumped back, hit the wall, and yelled something in her native tongue. The toilet gurgled louder, like it was laughing at her. "Cursed device," she shouted, grabbing a towel as a shield. She peeked from behind it, her eyes fierce, her pride broken. The water stopped. Silence returned. Zaya stayed frozen, still holding the towel. What was this thing? Why did it make that sound? Why did humans put it inside their homes, inside rooms with no escape? It wasn't just a seat, it was a trap, a monster with no face. She needed to know more. Jake had said it was normal, but Jake also laughed when the door hit her. Maybe he didn't understand the danger. Maybe humans had grown used to these threats, but she was new, and she wouldn't fall victim to this white beast. The next morning, she watched from the hallway as Jake went inside the bathroom. She heard the usual human sounds, water, brushing, small sneezes, and then the flush. Again, that same swirling growl, and Jake walked out like nothing happened. She stared at him like he had survived a deadly game. He noticed her expression and smiled. "Still scared of the toilet?" he asked, teasing. Xavier looked away. "It makes war sounds." Jake laughed. "It just flushes water down." "To where?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. Jake blinked. "That's what they all say before being eaten," she muttered. He tried explaining, using hand gestures, diagrams, even showing videos on his tablet. But the more Xavier saw, the more confused she became. "You build a chair that sucks things into a hidden water pit," she said slowly. "You even teach your children to use it." Jake nodded proudly. "Yup." Xavier looked horrified. "Humans are strange." Later that day, when Jake went out to buy groceries, Xavier decided to fight back. She couldn't let the toilet win. She opened the bathroom door with determination in her eyes. She had read the labels under the sink, strange liquids with names like bleach, cleaner, and bubble foam. She mixed 3 together in a bowl, then poured it into the toilet like a potion. "If you're a beast," she whispered, "this should weaken you." Then she pressed the handle again. The roar came, but this time it was different. There was foam, bubbles, and a strange hissing. Zia stepped back as the foam rose higher and higher, spilling over the edge like a volcano. "Oh no," she whispered. "I made it angry." She grabbed every towel she could find and tried to stop the flood, but the bubbles kept coming, pushing across the floor like an invading army. By the time Jake returned home, the hallway was wet, the bathroom door wide open, and Zia standing on top of a chair with a mop in her hand. He stared, blinking slowly. "What happened?" She looked down at him, her voice proud and serious. "I attacked first." Jake burst out laughing, nearly dropping the grocery bag. Zia didn't laugh with him, but she allowed herself a small smile. The toilet was still standing, still roaring when flushed, but she had taken the first step in understanding Earth's strangest danger. Tomorrow, she would study the microwave, but tonight, she kept one eye open, just in case the toilet tried to roar again in its sleep. The moment Jake stepped inside, he smelled something strange. It was sweet, sharp, and something else, something bubbly. He dropped the grocery bag on the table and walked down the hall slowly. Each step made a squish, and his socks were already wet. That was never a good sign. He turned the corner and stopped. Foam, white and thick, was oozing from under the bathroom door. It looked like the house had been attacked by a soap monster. "Zia," he called out, confused. No answer, just the faint sound of something sloshing inside. He pushed the door open, and the sight made his jaw drop. Zia stood on top of a plastic stool, holding a mop like a weapon. Her silver hair was tied back messily, and she was soaked from the knees down. She looked like a soldier after battle, tired, proud, and still a little scared. Jake's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked down at him from her stool and said calmly, "I attacked first." Jake blinked, then blinked again. "You? What did you do?" She held up a half-empty bottle of bleach, a bottle of scented soap, and a spray labeled Mega Cleaner. "I made a potion," she said, "to weaken the beast." Jake looked at the toilet, now covered in thick white bubbles. It looked harmless now, more like a bubble bath than a danger. Still, the water in the bowl was spinning slowly, as if the toilet was thinking about what just happened. Jake rubbed his face with both hands. "You poured all that into the toilet?" "Yes," Zia said proudly. "It fought back, but I stood my ground." Jake laughed, but it wasn't mean. It was the kind of laugh that said, "I can't believe this is real, but I love it." He started cleaning with her, grabbing more towels and drying the floor. Zia worked beside him, quieter now, stealing small glances at his face. Jake didn't yell, didn't scold, didn't say she was stupid. He just cleaned with her like it was no big deal. That was new for Zia. Back home, mistakes were punished, hard and cold. Here, mistakes made Jake laugh and grab another towel. When the mess was finally cleaned, Jake sat on the hallway floor, tired but smiling. "You know," he said, "you've officially started your journey as a human." Zia tilted her head. "By fighting a toilet." "Exactly," he said. "It's a rite of passage." She sat beside him slowly, still holding the mop like a weapon. She didn't say anything for a while, then finally whispered, "I thought you'd be angry." Jake shrugged. "You didn't do it to cause trouble. I did it because I was afraid," she said quietly. Jake looked at her and nodded. "Yeah, and now you're less afraid." Zia stared at the floor, the words feeling strange and warm inside her. Back on her planet, fear was shameful. Here, fear was something you could talk about. She didn't understand everything yet, but she was starting to see a difference. That night, when Jake went to bed, Zia stayed up in her room. She pulled out her small black notebook, her personal journal, and opened a new page. She titled it, "The Book of Earth Spells, Chapter 1, The Toilet Demon." Under it, she drew a terrible sketch of the toilet, with angry eyes and sharp teeth. Then she wrote, "It roars when provoked. It spins water to confuse its enemy. It eats anything you throw inside, but it can be tamed." The human was right. The beast is only dangerous if you fear it. I fear it still, but less than yesterday. She paused, tapping her pen gently against her lip, then added, "I like the human's laugh. It makes this world feel not so deadly." She smiled to herself and closed the book. Just then she heard the distant sound of a toilet flush echo from the other room. She froze, eyes wide for a moment, then chuckled softly. "You still sound like a monster," she whispered, "but at least now I know how to clean up your mess." She turned off the lights and curled up under the blanket. The earth was strange, loud and full of confusing machines, but maybe, just maybe, it wasn't trying to kill her after all. The soft hum in the kitchen had been bothering her for days. Zia could hear it every time she passed by, a low, steady vibration, like the growl of a sleeping animal. She had seen Jake open its door many times. Cold mist would rise and strange items would be taken out. He called it the fridge. He said it kept food cold. But to Zia, it was more than that. It was a prison. She had peeked inside once and saw what looked like frozen meat, hard white, wrapped in plastic, and cold like ice. She remembered staring at one piece and whispering, "Is this a frozen body part?" Jake had laughed and said, "It's chicken," but she wasn't convinced. No creature should be that cold, that quiet, and that hungry. It was always on, always humming, always watching. She was sure it was alive, maybe not fully, but partly, and she was going to prove it. That evening, Jake left to fix something in the garage. Zia took her chance, tiptoeing into the kitchen with her book of earth spells in one hand and her scanner in the other. She stood before the fridge like it was a boss enemy from her training years. "I am not afraid," she whispered. Though her hands trembled, she reached out, touched the handle and pulled. The door opened with a soft click, light flooded her face, and the cold air rushed out like a ghost escaping a trap. Zia gasped, her teeth chattering as she stared inside. There were boxes, bottles and containers of all sizes. Some had faces of happy animals printed on them. She stared at one small box labeled ice cream and gently touched it. It was solid, cold, and felt like frozen death. She quickly pulled her hand back. "What is this madness?" she muttered. She leaned closer, scanning the inside. The temperature was far below freezing, enough to keep organic tissue in stasis. In her world, only cryo chambers reached that level, and those were for deep space survival, but humans used it to store milk. Suddenly something behind her beeped. She jumped and hit her head on the top shelf. The door started to close on its own, slowly but surely. She panicked and shoved it open with both hands. "No, I won't be trapped inside your cold jaws," she yelled. She stepped back, breathing hard. Then she did something she thought was brave. She placed a small energy sensor inside the fridge and closed the door. She waited, watching the readings. The numbers spiked for a second, then settled. "Just as I thought," she whispered. "It feeds on energy." Her eyes narrowed. "It may not attack, but it consumes." She opened her notebook and wrote furiously. "The cold box is not a creature of violence, but one of hunger. It accepts offerings of food and drinks. In return, it gives back cold versions of the same, a strange ritual, perhaps one of control." She turned back toward the hallway, but before she could leave, her foot slipped. She fell, landing on her side with a loud thump. From behind her, the fridge door creaked open again, just slightly. It was watching. Jake heard the noise and came running. He found her on the floor, glaring at the fridge with her hand half raised like she was casting a spell. "Zia, what happened this time?" he asked, exhausted already. "It tried to close on me," she said, serious. Jake chuckled. "Fridge doors close on their own sometimes." "Exactly," she replied. "It's got a mind of its own." Jake helped her stand, shaking his head with a smile. He opened the fridge and pulled out a small juice box. "Here," he said, "peace offering." She stared at it like it might explode, but took it anyway. It was cold but sweet, and it didn't kill her. She sat on the couch with her legs tucked in, still staring toward the kitchen. Jake watched her and said, "You're getting used to Earth slowly." Zia didn't answer right away, then said, "Your machines, they're not like ours. Ours obey commands. Yours have moods." Jake laughed. "Well, that's one way to describe it." Zia looked down at her notebook, then at the juice box. "Maybe I was wrong," she said softly. "About what?" "Maybe the fridge isn't a monster." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Maybe," she continued, "it's a cold god, and this is its blessing." Jake laughed so hard, he nearly dropped his drink. Zia didn't laugh, but her eyes softened. The world was still strange, but maybe not evil. Still, as she walked to her room, she turned back to check the fridge one more time. It was still humming, still cold. She whispered, "I'm watching you too." And for the first time the fridge light flickered, just a little. Coincidence? Maybe. But Zia wasn't taking chances. She added 3 sticky notes to its door. One read, "Do not trust." One said, "Cold God," and the last said, "Feed carefully." The morning was too quiet. Zia noticed it the moment she opened her eyes. No sound of Jake humming in the kitchen. No clatter of cups or music from the old speaker. Just silence, thick and strange. She walked out of her room and found him still in bed. His face looked pale, his nose red, and he was wrapped up like a sleeping cocoon. She leaned closer, unsure. His eyes opened halfway, and he gave her a weak smile. "Morning, Zia," he whispered. "You're malfunctioning," she said, stepping back quickly. Jake chuckled and coughed. "It's just a cold." "Cold," she repeated, "like the fridge." He smiled again. "No, not the evil kind." Then he closed his eyes, too tired to talk more. Zia stood at the edge of his bed for a long moment, unsure what to do. On her planet, sickness was handled by machines and quiet nurses. Here, Jake had no one but her. She wasn't a healer, but she was a warrior, and warriors helped those who helped them. She went to the kitchen, opened her notebook, and stared at her scribbled notes. Toilet, beast, fridge, cold god. She turned to a blank page and wrote, "New mission, cure the human." She had seen humans drink hot liquids when they were sick. She would do the same. She opened the fridge slowly. "Feed carefully," she reminded herself, and found a container labeled chicken soup. It was cold and jiggly, like something half alive. She grabbed it carefully and placed it on the counter. Now came the problem. Jake had once used a strange device to heat food. It was a black box with a glass door, small lights and buttons. She remembered its name, microwave. Even the name sounded dangerous. She stood in front of it like it was about to explode. It made strange noises. It spun food in circles. It beeped loudly for no reason. Zia pressed one button. It blinked red and beeped. She pressed another. It did nothing. Then she pressed 3 random ones in a row. The door lit up. The plate inside started spinning, and a low humming sound filled the air. She screamed and jumped back, hiding behind a chair. But the soup didn't explode. It just spun and steamed like it was slowly waking up. She peeked over the chair, eyes wide. "It's cooking with waves," she whispered. "Invisible fire." When the microwave beeped again, she ran and pressed the door open. A puff of hot air hit her face. The soup was bubbling slightly, the smell warm and good. Zia blinked. It worked. She touched the bowl, hissed and dropped it fast. It was too hot to hold. She grabbed a towel, carried it to a tray, and placed a spoon beside it. Then she brought it carefully to Jake, who was still resting under the blanket. "Eat," she said, placing the tray beside him. Jake opened his eyes and looked at the soup. "You made this?" he asked, surprised. "I made war with your black box," she said, serious. Jake laughed, coughed, and sat up slowly. He tasted the soup and his eyes widened. "This is perfect," he said, his voice warm. Zia sat in the corner of the room, arms crossed, but her lips curved up slightly. "Of course it is," she replied, though her chest felt light and proud. Jake looked at her. "You know, you're learning really fast." She looked away, pretending not to care, but inside she felt something new. Not fear, not confusion, something almost like joy. For the first time she had done something that helped, something that mattered. Later, when Jake was asleep again, Zia opened her notebook and wrote, "The black box is powerful. It uses waves to heat, but only listens to strange codes. It does not speak, only beeps. I fear it less now, but I still watch it. If it ever spins the wrong way, I will strike first." She closed the book, yawned, and looked at Jake one last time. His chest rose and fell softly, peacefully. Zia whispered to herself, "Sleep, human. I will guard the kitchen." Because now she wasn't just a visitor, she was a part of this house. Even if every machine inside still scared her just a little, Zia stood in front of the bathroom mirror, holding the strange stick Jake had given her. It was called a toothbrush. She had finally learned to use it without stabbing her own gums. Progress, she thought, small progress. But today was different. Today she would face the one thing she had avoided since arriving on Earth, the one machine she feared more than the toilet, the shower. She had heard it many times, the loud burst of water, the way it slammed against the wall. Sometimes Jake even sang while using it. That was the most terrifying part. How could anyone sing during an attack? She looked at the metal handle and the strange round head above it. It looked like a silver disc with holes, harmless, until it released its water missiles. Zia took a deep breath. She had studied human behavior, watched videos, asked quiet questions. This was the moment. She needed to wash like a human, or she'd always be a guest, never part of this world. She stepped inside the shower, the curtain closing behind her like the gate to an arena. She touched the handle gently, slowly turning it. The disc above her hissed once, then exploded. A blast of cold water hit her head like a frozen slap. She shrieked, slipped on the wet floor, and slammed against the wall. "It's attacking," she cried. The water turned warmer, but it didn't matter. Zia was now in full defense mode. She reached for the only weapon nearby, a rubber plunger. Leaning against the tub wall, she grabbed it, held it like a spear, and swung wildly at the stream above. "I will not drown quietly." From outside the door, Jake heard thuds, splashes, and what sounded like a battle cry. He ran to the bathroom, knocking hard. "Zia, are you okay?" Inside, she was now hiding behind the curtain, soaked and furious. "The water is endless," she shouted. Jake opened the door slightly, careful not to invade her privacy. He turned the handle off with one quick twist, and the water stopped. "See? Off," he said gently. Zia peeked from behind the curtain with wet hair over her eyes. She looked like a tiny drowned alien warrior. "You knew its weakness," she whispered, amazed. Jake laughed softly. "You just have to control the handle, that's all." Zia stepped out, water dripping from her clothes, the plunger still in her hand. Jake handed her a towel. She took it and wiped her face, not looking at him. "I lost the battle," she said quietly. Jake shook his head. "No, you didn't. You saw me scream. I saw you try." She looked up at him slowly. His smile wasn't mocking. It was kind, warm, and it didn't feel like laughter. It felt like understanding. Zia sighed and dropped the plunger. "I will face it again," she promised. Jake nodded. "And next time, I'll teach you how to make it warm before it sprays." That night, after drying off and changing into clean clothes, Zia opened her notebook again. The pages were filled with notes, drawings, strange symbols, and now, a wet mark from her fall. She turned to a fresh page and wrote, "The water weapon is called a shower. It is powerful, but can be tamed. If turned too fast, it punishes. If handled with care, it warms. I attacked it with a plunger, but the human turned it off with a twist. His control over the beast is strong. I must learn his technique." She tapped her pen against her chin, thinking, then added one more line. "Earth does not test with battles. It tests with confusion. But each time I understand, I grow stronger." She closed the notebook and looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her hair was messy, her face a little red, but her eyes were steady. She was learning, not just about human machines, but about Jake, about trust, about kindness. She turned off the light, walked to her room, and before closing the door she whispered toward the bathroom, "Next time, I'll win." The toilet gave a small gurgle in response. She narrowed her eyes. "You stay quiet," she warned, then shut the door with pride in her step. She was not afraid anymore. Well, maybe just a little. Jake was out for the day. He had left early, saying something about getting parts for his workshop. Zia stood by the window, watching his small transport vehicle disappear into the morning light. She felt something strange inside her chest, quiet and calm. This house, once a place of confusion and danger, now felt there at the end, stood the door she once feared most, the bathroom. She remembered her first encounter with the toilet beast, how it growled, spun and flooded her world with bubbles. She remembered her panic, her battle cries, her shampoo poison. Now she felt only silence. It was time to face the one thing she had avoided since the day of the flood, time to fix what she broke. She grabbed Jake's toolbox, which he had taught her how to open. The tools still looked like alien weapons to her, twisty things, clippy things, sharp, flat things, but she had watched him enough to learn a little. Sia knelt beside the toilet and opened the tank at the back. Inside, strange pieces floated and wiggled in water like sleeping creatures. Something was leaking slowly from one side. A loose pipe, she guessed. She remembered Jake's words, "Tighten gently, too hard and it breaks." She took a wrench, found the loose piece, and turned it carefully, once, twice, just enough. Then she checked the water line, adjusted a knob, and wiped the area dry. She pressed the silver handle. The toilet flushed with a soft roar, smooth and clean. No bubbles, no splash, no growl. Sia stood slowly, blinking in surprise. She had done it by herself. No help, no panic, no fear. She stepped back, looking at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Her hair was tied up, her hands covered in small smudges, but her face was different. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fixing, improving, becoming part of this strange home. She felt something rise inside her, something she had never felt before. Laughter. A soft giggle escaped her lips, then a short laugh, awkward but real. She covered her mouth in surprise, then laughed again, louder this time. It felt good, like warmth in her chest. Jake returned a little later, tired and carrying a small box of supplies. He froze when he heard the sound, Zia's laughter, echoing from the hallway. He dropped the box on the table and ran toward the sound. He found her dancing in a small circle beside the bathroom, a towel wrapped around her shoulders like a cape. "What's going on?" he asked, confused. She stopped and pointed proudly at the toilet. "It flushes," she said with pride. Jake looked at it, blinked, then turned to her. "You fixed it." She nodded, chest puffed out. "I watched, I learned, I remembered, and then I did it." Jake smiled wide, the kind that reached his eyes. "I'm impressed," he said. "You didn't even call for help." "I didn't need to," she said. "I have become the tamer of beasts." Jake laughed. "So what's next? Will you fix the microwave too?" Zia narrowed her eyes. "That one still watches me. I'm not ready for that battle." Later, she sat at the kitchen table, notebook in front of her. She wrote slowly, carefully. "I have done something big today. Not for survival, not for defense, just because I wanted to. The toilet no longer growls at me. It listens, obeys, and does not flood. I tamed it not with fear, but with tools. Maybe Earth machines are not alive, but fixing them feels like healing a friend." She paused, then added one more line. "Today I laughed. I hope I do it again." She closed the notebook and looked around the room. The fridge hummed softly behind her, but it no longer felt like a threat. The microwave blinked slowly, still mysterious, still suspicious. The shower waited, calm and quiet. Everything was in its place. She stood, stretched her arms, and said to herself, "I think I like this planet." From the living room, Jake called, "Hey Zia, want to help me build something later?" She smiled. "Yes," she replied, "but only if it doesn't growl." He laughed, and so did she, this time without fear. The house was still strange, the machine still confusing, but Zia had changed, and that was the real victory.